In the autumn of 1888, the streets of Whitechapel were cloaked in shadows. The air was thick with the scent of coal smoke and despair, mingling with the faint cries of street vendors and the distant clatter of horse-drawn carriages. It was a place where hope was a luxury few could afford, where the flickering gaslights barely pierced the darkness that seemed to swallow the souls of those who walked its cobblestone paths. But amidst the grinding poverty and the relentless struggle for survival, a darker story unfolded, one that would haunt the world for generations. This is not just the story of a murderer. This is the story of lives lost, of women whose voices were silenced too soon, and of a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Mary Ann Nichols was a mother, a wife, and a woman who had fallen on hard times. She walked these streets not by choice, but by necessity. Her life, like so many others, was a struggle against the weight of a world that had turned its back on her. She had once known love, laughter, and the warmth of a family, but those days were long gone. Now, she wandered the alleys of Whitechapel, searching for a way to survive another day. On August 31st, 1888, Mary Ann's life was tragically cut short. She became the first of 5 women whose stories would forever be tied to the name Jack the Ripper. Her death was not just a crime, it was a loss, a life extinguished, a story left unfinished. Over the next few months, fear gripped London like a suffocating fog. The killer struck again and again: Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. Each woman had her own story, her own dreams, and her own battles. They were not just names in a ledger or victims of a crime. They were people: mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends. Their lives were marked by hardship, but they were lives nonetheless, filled with moments of joy, love, and resilience. Annie Chapman, a woman who loved to sing and dance, found herself destitute after the death of her husband. She had once been the life of the party, her laughter echoing through the rooms of her home. But life had been cruel, stripping her of everything she held dear. She wandered the streets of Whitechapel, her spirit unbroken, but her body weary. On September 8th, 1888, Annie's life was taken in a brutal act of violence. Her death left a void in the hearts of those who knew her, a void that would never be filled. Elizabeth Stride, an immigrant who dreamed of a better life, faced the harsh realities of a world that offered little mercy. She had come to London with hope in her heart, but the city had been unkind. She worked tirelessly, scraping together what little she could to survive. On September 30th, 1888, Elizabeth's life was cut short, her dreams left unfulfilled. She was more than just a victim. She was a woman who had dared to dream in a world that often crushed such dreams. Catherine Eddowes, a spirited soul with a sharp wit, struggled to find her place in a society that had little room for women like her. She was a fighter, a woman who refused to be broken by the world's cruelty. But even her strength could not protect her from the darkness that lurked in the shadows of Whitechapel. On the same night as Elizabeth Stride, Catherine's life was taken in a brutal and senseless act. Her death was a loss not just to those who knew her, but to the world that had failed to protect her. Mary Jane Kelly, the youngest of the 5, was a woman whose life was filled with promise and potential. She had dreams of a better future, of a life beyond the grim streets of Whitechapel. But those dreams were shattered on November 9th, 1888, when her life was taken in the most brutal of ways. Her death left behind a legacy of unanswered questions, a reminder of the fragility of life and the cruelty of the world. The killer, known only as Jack the Ripper, left behind a trail of horror and unanswered questions, letters taunting the police, gruesome details, and a city paralyzed by fear. But amidst the chaos, the stories of these women were often overshadowed by the mystery of their killer. For over a century, the world has been captivated by the enigma of Jack the Ripper, but what of the lives he took? What of the women who were more than just victims? These women were more than the tragedies that befell them. They were individuals with hopes, fears, and dreams. Their stories remind us that behind every headline, every mystery, there are real lives, lives that deserve to be remembered. They were mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends. They were women who had loved and been loved, who had laughed and cried, who had dreamed of a better future. Their lives were cut short, but their stories endure. The identity of Jack the Ripper remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Was he a doctor, a madman, or someone hiding in plain sight? We may never know. But what we do know is that the legacy of these 5 women endures. They are not just footnotes in a gruesome tale. They are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, even in the face of unimaginable darkness. As the fog of time rolls over Whitechapel, their stories remain, whispering to us from the past. They remind us to look beyond the shadows, to see the humanity in every life, and to remember that every story, no matter how tragic, is worth telling. For in remembering them, we honor not just their lives, but the lives of all those who have been forgotten by history. Their voices may have been silenced, but their stories will never be forgotten. In recent years, a British researcher named Russell Edwards has claimed to have solved the mystery of Jack the Ripper's identity. Edwards believes that Aaron Kosminski, a Polish barber who was 23 at the time of the murders, is the infamous killer. According to Edwards, DNA evidence found on a shawl taken from the scene of Catherine Edow's murder in 1888 matches that of Kosminski. The shawl, which came into Edwards' possession in 2007, allegedly contains blood stains from Edow's and semen stains from Kosminski. Edwards, along with Dr. Jari Luhalainen, a senior lecturer at Liverpool John Moores University, claims to have isolated and matched the DNA, providing what they believe is conclusive evidence. Kosminski, who suffered from schizophrenia and was later admitted to an asylum, was a suspect in the original investigation, but was never arrested. Edwards argues that Kosminski's occupation as a barber, or barber surgeon, as it was known at the time, gave him the anatomical knowledge necessary to commit the gruesome murders. Additionally, a document from 1891 reportedly names Kosminski as a strong suspect with homicidal tendencies and auditory hallucinations. Despite Edwards' claims, some remain skeptical. The DNA evidence has not been published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, leaving room for doubt. Nevertheless, Edwards and 10 descendants of Catherine Eddowes are seeking legal acknowledgement that Kosminski was the killer. They hope to bring closure to the families of the victims and to put an end to the endless speculation and false suspects that have plagued the case for over a century. Edwards also hopes to see the name Jack the Ripper retired, as it was coined by an enterprising journalist and has no connection to the actual murderer. Instead, he wants Kosminski's name to be linked to the crimes, ensuring that the victims are remembered not as faceless casualties of a sensationalized killer, but as real women with real lives and stories. The tale of Jack the Ripper is more than just a chilling mystery. It is a reminder of the lives that were lost and the humanity that was overlooked. As we delve into the shadows of Whitechapel, we must remember the women who walked those streets, not as victims, but as individuals who deserved to be seen, heard, and remembered. Their stories are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Even in the face of unimaginable darkness,